So this is part two of my coverage on America's caste system. So the question is, the part one I answered the question of whether there is a caste system. The part two is who are in this different castes, and can you overcome it, and can you fall into a lower caste? Yes, and you can do all the above. Well, let me start with who are in the caste system. I don't think it's a surprise to see that Caucasians in the top caste. They're the one who built the country, who conquered the barbarians and natives, and made into a civilized society that we know it today. So from that tradition, from that heritage, from that inheritance, they are able to build and maintain a lot of financial, political, cultural power. Nothing wrong with that. I think they build overall a very good society to live in. In fact, probably better than most society I've visited in the world. And below that, it's almost like the color of hues. The darker you are, superficially, you tend to occupy a lower caste because there's expectation. For example, if you are lighter skinned like Asians, you tend to be perceived as hardworking, not so reliable, especially if you're Chinese. But this is a political problem with that that I can get into. If you tend to be good, trusted for middle class, lower class, mental type of work. You're appreciated for your hardworking spirit and also your ability to work long hours. And that's essentially the survival technique that Asians come to acquire to be able to find a place in society as that caste. Then you go to the brown people, which now de facto are selling labor to it's a labor pool of America. And you get lower than that, you have the black people, which sad to say, whose talents are vastly wasted other than in the area of creative endeavors like sports and entertainment. They could be great doctors, they could be just as great lawyers, orators, anything. But again, the caste system kind of shapes your own perception of who you are and what you can do within society. Whether that's true or not is debatable. I believe with extraordinary self-determination and some lucky breaks, anyone can break that. That goes back to my part. Can you rise in this caste system? But you have to understand that the difficulty, the challenges you have to overcome is immense, and most individuals aren't lucky enough or aren't determined enough. It's just probabilities. How many percent of your population are that determined to be the best? Like Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan. They are who they are because most people already can't do what they do, are not determined to win at all costs or become somebody at all costs. And these, again, I'm just making cliches of sports stars, but you see that. Of course, there are Jewish people as well who have done immensely well as a group, but there's different situations that I can go into later. So there's caste system. Can you rise above it? Absolutely. But depending on who you are and what racial group you are, you have different chances of raising it. Believe it or not, people in darker colors, especially black people, they'll have a harder overall chance, but they'll have higher individual probabilities, because there are certain things that they are so good at that other racial groups, whether by genetic or by culture, I don't know. I can't explain it yet. Just hard to do. Simply sports, name one, where none of us are gifted like black people are, in music, in singing. They have vocal cord that, on average, always speaking average, just insanely gifted. And God is fair in that sense that He give you some and take away some. But as a racial group, let's say, I personally speak in my experience as Asian, I think it's very difficult to overcome that for several reasons. One of the reasons is that maybe I should drill down a little bit more. As being Asian of East Asian, meaning Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and so forth. I think it's very difficult because we have as these cultures, Asians, we have a very individualistic mode of operandis. So we don't really work together very well. And as a dominant caste, this shortcoming can easily be exploited because if there are only 1 out of 100 people who can become top level manager out of your racial group, let's not 1 out of 100, maybe 1 out of 50, 1 out of 20, you're going to kill each other to get there. You're going to kill each other to get to that place. Instead of working together, say, let's rise up together. You fight for the few crumbs, so to speak. What I see is a little bit different is with Indians, and I applaud Indian people doing this, is that they're able to work together, and maybe it's my understanding is false. Maybe this is just third person, I see it from outside. They're able to work together, especially in the tech, in the finance, in several sectors that particular. They're able to work together to rise together. And this is why, and maybe it's, let me pause, maybe it's because there's so many of them. But then you can't explain that because there's so many of Chinese going to these same industries and they're not rising. So, well, they're not rising in the same quantity as Indians. So maybe to my plausible explanation is that they're willing to work together more. Hence, you can't be a CEO until you, of an Indian CEO, until a certain number of middle to upper middle management key positions are also occupied by Indians. And then you get the support that you need. And even, let's say, an exiting white CEO sees that the key positions are controlled by the Indians, and who is better to be able to relate and manage them than another Indian? Because ultimately the goal is to longevity of a company, like above and beyond a person. Whether that's for a democratic system, political system, like it doesn't be democratic, it could be communist, it could be any political system. It's continuity. The system is more important than the individual. And in business, the same thing. The system has to be has to survive the individual. Otherwise, what's the point of that all the work that person has done in their lifetime? So, applause to my Indian fellow citizens. And I kind of understand why, when I was in San Francisco, why there's so much animosities between the Indians and Chinese. But at least I hear that from the Chinese side, because I don't know if the Indian feel the same way. But there's so much animosity. They feel they're annoyed. Oh, they're still, and I feel it's to a certain extent. I'm sorry to say this, but I think Chinese people are jealous. They play the cards wrong. I grew up in America. I see Asians. They don't work with each other. They distrust each other. They sabotage each other. They do a lot of things that I hear black people complain about other black people. And Chinese people do the exact same thing. And the funny thing is, I hear other people, oh, you Chinese people stick together. Not if you see it from inside this game. It's not. So, yeah. So you can fight the caste system. You can actually beat it. But you got to work together. And we spoke about Jewish people earlier. Jewish people is personified working together to beat the caste system. I mean, they had a terrible lot everywhere in the world. But they're able to survive it, maybe because whether in Europe or in the U.S., especially in the U.S., when given an opportunity and you work together, you can build some amazing things together as a people. I hope what I'm saying is not to divide people according to races, but simply reflecting what is the reality of the world we live in. At my age, F ideologies. You live in a real world. You got to deal with real world phenomena, and that's what I see. And I hope what I said makes sense for some of you. I know I'll probably get blasted by plenty of others, but again, this is how I see the world based on my personal experience. You might have run a different course. You see it completely differently, and I don't disagree with you. I'm just telling my point of view. All right. Peace out.